Okay, so now on to our major awards. Each year, we recognize exceptional journalism and the journalists who create it, as well as some in the community who've inspired us. Educator of the Year, first up, Matt Potter.
This is continuing on a mentorship theme for me personally. This is the picture we decided to use. Yes, so we had difficult competition for Educator of the Year this year, and we chose Doug Cosper for his work teaching and mentoring young journalists over his career, both domestically and overseas. One of the people that Doug mentored was me, and I worked at the Daily Camera with him and Carol and Chris Roberts. They were on a pod. They were the pod, and they allowed me as the newbie young journalist in the newsroom to come with them sometimes to lunch, and they would mentor me and tell me things that were kind of at the exalted high level of the newsroom that I wouldn't have heard otherwise. And so I want to introduce Carol, Doug's wife. Doug passed away from cancer last summer, and Carol will accept this award posthumously for him. Carol's here with their daughter, Alethea, as well. I told you about working with them at the Daily Camera. And then when I talked to Carol yesterday, she kind of reminded me a little bit more about some of the other things that they did together, that we all did, actually, which included, actually, Doug spent a lot of time at various countries teaching journalists in these countries about how we do it in the United States. And you may say to yourself that we don't have very many rights here and we're complaining about all these things that are happening with free press and free speech, but boy, Doug would come home with some stories. And so when we all would get together, I also had been overseas a bit and would tell him, oh, I didn't see it, it wasn't that bad, where I was. And so I don't know, can I tell the story I was telling you yesterday?
Sure.
One time we were all sitting down having lunch and we were talking about Doug giving a seminar to all of these students. And on the break, they had 15 minutes. One of the students came up to him and said, I want to tell you something, Mr. Cosper. And he said, okay. And she said, the people who censor us, the people that you are talking about actually are in this room here with us, acting as if they are us. And I said, Doug, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, were you scared that you were going to get arrested? And he said, no, I was there with USAID. I felt perfectly safe. And I just said, I couldn't even believe that story, because when I would go overseas, if you actually saw the people who were the ones doing the things that we say to ourselves that we can't even imagine this happens in other countries, that was a sign that you were probably going to be the next person who was detained. So with all of that, I think Carol might have something more to say about Doug's work, including his overseas work. And so I'm going to turn the microphone over to her.
She's wearing heels and I'm not. As Beth said, I met Doug at the Daily Camera. It was some 30 years ago now, when we worked together on some stories, and of course we also had our separate beats, but we did win a couple of SPJ awards back in the early 90s, and so it's kind of like full circle coming here today, and I'm very thankful to the organization for recognizing his work as an educator. Doug taught at CU Boulder in the journalism school for several years, and then also, as Beth said, in about a dozen third world countries in Asia, Africa, Eastern Europe, and other places. He was an excellent journalist who decided to go into teaching, which I think was really his real passion. He cut his teeth in journalism in Tyler, Texas, which was his hometown, and he used to love covering Texas because there were all kinds of things that happened there that he told stories about throughout his career, entertaining students around the world with stories about Billy Bob. So after that, he moved to the Netherlands and he worked for UPI, the wire service, there as a foreign correspondent in The Hague. He came back. As I said, he was in Colorado, and that was when we met. But his true gift, I think, was as a teacher and a mentor. He inspired and coached thousands of students around the world. His style was not to lecture, but to meet students where they were and to help them develop the reporting skills and the news judgment to succeed, but above all, accuracy and fairness that would, guide them throughout their careers. Students responded well to his toughness, and many kept in touch with him for years after being in his class. I wanted to share with you just the breadth of his work, and his impact was rather astounding. He coached professional journalists and newspapers in Myanmar and East Timor. He started student newspapers in Romania, Botswana, and Azerbaijan. He coached radio journalists in South Sudan. And he brought more than a dozen Palestinian journalists for a course at CU Boulder. He had tons of stories, as you can imagine, and so he lived a very rich life, and was I think as thankful for the opportunity to teach as the students were to have him. So I thank you very much.